Stephen Kick, CEO of NightDive Studios. Welcome. First off, on behalf of nerds everywhere, thank you. Thanks for bringing back so many great classics that we love. You've remastered over 24 classic titles. Yeah, really looking forward to digging in and learning how this came to be. But I'd like to start at the beginning. So your very first computer as a kid.
Yeah.
How did you get started? What was your first computer? How did you get started in gaming?
Man, that's a really good question. I don't think anyone's asked that specifically, like, what was your first computer? Technically, it was a Commodore 64. I bought it at a yard sale for 25 bucks.
Nice.
But it didn't really last that long because, we're talking probably 1994. So it's already pretty outdated by that point. But my family got our first computer in 1995, and it was a Pentium 100 megahertz computer with 16 megs of RAM, and I think the hard drive was, man, it might have been a gig, but it was like top of the line at the time, and had Windows 3.1 on it.
Any games you remember playing back then?
Yeah, one of the stories I love telling is we're at Computer City buying this thing, and I see Doom shareware on the shelf, and I tried to sneak it in with the purchase of the computer, and my mom caught it right as it was being scanned, and she sees the cover emblazoned with demons and guns and blood and that just epic piece of art, and she just immediately was like, no, we're not getting this. So they compromised. My parents let me buy Dark Forces instead, and that's really kind of what kicked it off for me. Going home, having my dad show me how to run the game through DOS, and just being absolutely hooked.
How old were you at the time?
Oh man, probably 10.
All right. Yeah, and then a few years go by in high school. What were you and your circle of friends like back then? Were you holding LAN parties and part of the nerd crew?
Oh, absolutely. I kind of had this weird in between group of friends, I guess you could call them, in high school. I was kind of like your prototypical jock, actually. Like I played sports pretty much all year, every sport that I could. But when I wasn't doing that, I was playing video games. And a number of my friends that were also into gaming were also on those sports teams. So like when the other guys would go and drink on the weekends, we would bring our computers together at our houses and have LAN parties. So
Nice.
yeah, it was a really good time. We played a lot of Counter-Strike when that first came out, and then one of our other favorites was Command and Conquer Red Alert. That was a favorite of ours.
Yeah, we were playing a lot of StarCraft, and of course Duke Nukem. Command and Conquer was a big one. A couple years ago, I found a computer at the dump. It was actually the one behind me. I called up some of my old nerdy friends, and we started holding retro LAN parties, and we do it every spring and fall. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, that's one thing that I think has been lacking is the social aspect of gaming.
Are you guys lugging those CRTs around like we did back in the day?
That's the rule, CRT only. And so yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I got a couple videos on the channel if you want to check it out of some of our LAN parties. So
I had a really poor financial decision I made back then, and it was to buy like a 21-inch ViewSonic, which weighed about like 75 pounds. But man, that thing was huge. I mean, it would warm you up when it turned on. It was. I was telling you earlier, like I had that exact tower back there with the Altec Lansing speakers and all that, and it was
you see the Altex, yep.
yeah, yeah. It was a P3 800 megahertz computer, I think.
Yep, that's what this is.
So yeah, that could very well be mine.
It could be. It made its way to the dump in Northern California somehow.
Yeah. Did it have a GeForce 256 in it?
I'd have to see what it originally came with. I've got a Voodoo 3 in it right now, and so hence the you can see the shirt that I've got here. I'd love to get some of the 3D effects guys on sometime. I don't know what they're up to, but the three founders of it, that would be really cool.
Oh, I know some guys that worked at 3D effects before it, eventually became NVIDIA. I have a strong love for 3D effects just because it was one of those moments when I spent all summer saving up to buy a graphics card and installing it myself, figuring that whole thing out as a 11, 12-year-old, and then being able to switch. I think it was Dark Forces Jedi Knight, and switching it from software mode to Direct 3D or OpenGL or whatever it was at the time, and then seeing the game run at like 35, 40 FPS in 3D. 3D acceleration was a life-changing moment for me.
Yeah, I remember I could never afford one back in the day, and even now they've gotten so expensive. I traded one. A friend hooked me up. There was one guy in our group that saved up everything. He was the one guy that had a job, and we were all very envious.
I still want one. Like, I had one back in the day, but it was the Voodoo one. It was it had 6 megs on board, I think. 4 of which was 3D, 2 of which was 2D RAM. And it came with Turok, Jane's Longbow, and Moto Racer GP.
Awesome. And you had to get a 2D card too with the little cable that connects the two.
Yep, yep.
So in 2012, you created NightDive Studios. So what path led you to that moment?
Well, when I was in high school, I was really gravitating towards writing and 3D modeling. My friends and I, we had obtained copies of 3D Studio Max online, and we were just kind of playing with them on our own. And I was getting really interested in that, but I didn't really know where I wanted to go to school. It was right around that time that game degrees were becoming a thing in some of the for-profit schools, like the Art Institutes, the Academy of Arts, Full Sail, that type of thing. And I saw an ad in PC Gamer actually for the Art Institute of California, San Francisco, and they were having like a portfolio contest, more or less, where you could send in your art and they could potentially award you with like a scholarship. And so I did that, and I didn't get a scholarship, but the program was just really exciting, and so my mom decided to send me there, and I enrolled in their game art and design program. So they had us do all kinds of things. Like we did game design, level design, 3D modeling, animating. We even took some programming classes. So we kind of hit all the major disciplines of game development. And I'd say after like the third or fourth game design document I wrote, I was kind of burned out on that almost immediately and shifted my focus into doing game art. So um, I really focused on like 3D modeling, and then from there I really narrowed it down to just doing character art. And so that was kind of like my entire portfolio was characters. And I got a job pretty much right away out of school, down in California. My girlfriend, who I'd met at school, got a job at Sony as soon as she graduated. She was a really talented artist. And I was working for a company called Paleo Interactive or Paleo Entertainment, and they had started this really small game dev studio in Pacific Beach, based off of a Half-Life 2 mod that they had done. And their ambitions were really grand. They had immediately licensed the Crytek engine. They were one of the first to do it, despite the fact the engine wasn't even done. And they were trying to make basically a AAA game with a bunch of kids that were fresh out of school. So that was like my first official industry job. I worked there for probably about a year, and then I got a job at Sony with my girlfriend. She got me an art test there, and then I was at Sony for a number of years, and I worked on some of their free-to-play MMOs. So one was like a Warcraft for kids game called Free Realms. And then I did some Star Wars titles. And finally, I was a character lead on PlanetSide 2. But yeah, after a while, I just kind of got burnt out. I ended up having to do like outsource management at the end, which was kind of a bummer for me, like having to look at other people's art and then tell them how to fix it as opposed to just doing it on my own. And so my girlfriend, again, we're both working there. We both decided to quit, and we loaded everything that we had into our little Honda Civic, and we drove across the border into Tijuana, Mexico, and basically traveled for 10 months through all of Central America, all the way down to the Panama Canal. And during that trip, I had brought like a little netbook with me, and it had Curse of Monkey Island, Full Throttle, Fallout 1 and 2, basically any game from that era that would run on like a really low powered netbook, essentially. And one night when I was in Guatemala, I just had this feeling that I had to play System Shock 2. It was one of my favorite games. The atmosphere was just perfect. Again, I was like kind of in the middle of the jungle. There was a torrential downpour. There was thunder and lightning. It was such a cool experience. And for whatever reason, it was like, I got to play this game right now. So I tried to boot it up, and I couldn't get it to install. I kept getting errors. I think it was on a 64-bit operating system, and it was a 32-bit game. And I wasn't savvy enough to figure out how to get the exe working or anything like that. So I went to GOG.com. There was satellite internet there, amazingly, and discovered that it was not there, but it was their most requested game at the time. And in the comments that people left on the wish list, there was links to articles about what happened to Looking Glass when they went bankrupt. And I just started doing some research and discovered that some of their assets went to this insurance company in the Midwest. So I went to their website, found the email for their general counsel, and just kind of fired them off an email and was like, hey, do you guys still have the rights to this game? Definitely not, expecting anything back. But within a day, I got a reply asking if I wanted to develop System Shock 3. So again, in the middle of the jungle, couple $1,000s to my name to last me the rest of the trip. Wasn't really in the position to start a AAA project. But I proposed to them, hey, well, why don't we put out the old games? You can't get them. And there's this thing called digital distribution where you don't have to create packaging and you don't need retail space. And they loved that idea, and they kind of just pushed forward with it with me as I was learning the ins and outs of starting a business, understanding, the basic terms of a licensing contract, like trial by fire, mostly just trying to figure this stuff out as I went, and managed to convince friends and family to loan me enough money for the license. And then reached out to GOG and said, hey, I've got the rights to your most requested game. And they didn't believe me at first. So we went back and forth. We figured that out, and then eventually launched the game on, I think, Valentine's Day in 2012. And it was a massive hit. And it kind of kicked off the entire business and the whole goal of going out and preserving these old games so that they could be enjoyed again.
How did you go about building the team for NightDive?
So at first it was just me, and I had managed to get the game on Steam. That was an interesting story too. It was during the time of Greenlight, where if you had a game, you could put it on their Greenlight program and people would vote on whether or not it pretty much deserved to be on the platform. And I didn't think that was really an appropriate place for System Shock. So I actually just wrote to Gabe Newell and just said, hey, I've got the rights to this. Can I get this on Steam? And he was like, yeah, this is like my favorite game. Here, so-and-so,
Awesome.
help him out. Get him a Steam account. And so,
So he replied right away.
yeah. And so that's how I got it on there. And then back then you had to use the command line to upload your games onto Steam, which was really interesting. But anyways, the game had been out for like a month or two or some length of time, and I was browsing on the forums where people could create like their mod guides, that type of thing. And there was this one person that was making these very comprehensive walkthroughs and guides using images, and it was really well done. and I just decided to add them to my Steam friend list and like start talking to them. Hey, I love what you did here. Do you want to help me out with my webpage? I basically want to mirror your content on there and start an archive on NightDiveStudios.com. And we quickly became friends, and I realized how talented and motivated he was, and brought him on as my first employee. His name is Daniel Gratian, and he's in England actually, and he's still with the company after all these years. And he's now a producer on many of our bigger projects. So he was kind of our first. I think Larry Cooperman was our second hire. He was a business development guy who was working at GameStop at the time. And another really cool story. I mean, he kind of just reached out to me on LinkedIn. It's like, hey, I've been in the industry for years and years. I really want to be a part of something new and exciting, and I really love these old games that you're bringing back. Let's meet at GDC. So we met there, and he goes, who do you want to meet? And at the time, it was really difficult for me to reach out to, like, let's say Activision or EA and be like, hey, I want to license your stuff. They'd look at me and be like, well, who the hell are you? Just some kid, basically. And so Larry goes, hey, who do you want to meet? And I said, well, I would love to meet somebody at Activision. He's like, okay, 5 minutes, we got a meeting. And so we would walk over to, one of the restaurants, and there was the head of business development at Activision. And I would, meet them face to face. And, oh, it turns out Larry's been friends with them for a number of years. So he was kind of that veteran presence that I desperately needed at that point in time to make all those connections with everybody that we would end up doing business with. So I just met some really cool people kind of organically. And yeah, that's just kind of how it's gone ever since.
And you developed your own engine, the Kex engine. Tell me about that project.
Yeah, so that goes really well into what we were just talking about. We had kind of run into a point where we had done a lot of like DOS era games on Steam, adventure games, point and click, that kind of thing, that we could use DOSBox or ScumVM to emulate on modern operating systems. But we were starting to find that games from like Windows 3.1 and onward were incredibly difficult to run on, Windows XP, Windows 8, Windows 7, whatever it was at the time. And we just didn't have any engineering presence on the team, really. It was, again, I think just me, Daniel, and Larry. And one of the games that we were kind of looking at the time was Turok Dinosaur Hunter. And we had found the rights, and we were in the process of kind of negotiating those with, it was DreamWorks at the time. And coming to the realization, like, yeah, we can't really get this thing to run. Again, it was the game that was bundled with the 3DFX, accelerator back in the day. So the complexity was much higher for something like that versus, again, like a DOS era game. So I was on the internet, and I found a WordPress account of this guy named Sam, who was currently trying to port the game to modern platforms. And so I reached out to him. Really talented engineer who was a level designer at the time at Timegate Studios. They were working on, I think it was called Section 8, and they had done some of the Fear expansions. And this was just his hobby on the side. He was developing this thing called Kex that would be a source port for Turok. And I asked him if he wanted to do it full time and finish his project with NightDive, and he joined up right away. And that very first iteration of the Kex engine was pretty much born at that point.
Was he the only programmer that was involved?
Yes, at first.
Wow.
And then from there, it was like, hey, Sam, you're doing a really good job. Do you know anybody else that, would like to help us out? And that's where James Haley came from. Edward Richardson came from there too. He's like our multiplayer expert. And soon enough, we basically had the a big chunk of the Doom community working at NightDive, and that's where Strife came from. Actually, they had done some work. I think it was called Chocolate Strife at the time, and we had found the rights to the game, and we had kind of based our work on that. And yeah, we started small, like I said, with those point and click adventures, and as we kept growing, the games got more and more complex, and now we've got, I think it's like the third or fourth iteration of the Kex engine, and it's powering everything. It can do, PlayStation 5 and Xbox and Switch 2. It's come a really long way.
So my big question about Kex is, are there any plans to license it?
That's a really good question. It's one that we've had for a long time. I think if the right partner approached us with a project, it would be something that we would consider. One of my goals that I would love to see happen is, as opposed to it being more of like a framework that runs original code from these classic games, I would love to see it be its own like game engine, so to speak, much in the likes of like Unity or Unreal or something like that, but designed and kind of specifically tailored for creating like boomer shooters.
Mm-hmm.
Games from that era. I think that would be a really cool thing to do with it, but we'll see. It's been on my list for a long time, but it's just with the amount of games that we have coming in these days, it's hard to dedicate kind of the cycles towards taking the engine in a new direction.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to tear into it, and I know a lot of other indie developers would as well. Yeah, it could be something like Unreal, where if you want to do a commercial aspect of it, we got to give you a share. But I would love to see it. It sounds like there might be something like that on the horizon.
I hope so. I hope so. As the team keeps growing, I think that we'll have more dedicated roles towards just building out the technology as opposed to, working on the games themselves. And we could very well be at that point soon. So I'll let you know.
All right. When you're doing a remake, I'm curious if you have original developers from the original game involved, and if so, who have you worked with?
Just one at the time being. We've got Robert Waters, who was an original developer on System Shock and was at Looking Glass for many years. And he's primarily our like concept artist for the remake. So anytime we were like, well, Rob, what would 20-year-old you create if he had your skills and abilities now based on this, design from 1994? And he'll take it and he'll rework it and, apply all the influences and experiences he's had since then and give us something just amazing to work off of. So yeah, a lot of, the artistic direction and the overall aesthetic of the remake is because of him.
So you've remastered about 2 dozen. How many?
Good question. A lot of games.
All right. Well, out of those, do you have any favorites that you were just particularly proud of?
Yeah, I know that we talked earlier about one of my first games, which was Dark Forces. So when we finally were able to do that with Disney and Lucas, it felt like a full circle kind of moment for me. Um, Getting to play the game in the engine that I helped facilitate. One of the things that I love doing is coming up with some of the achievements for some of these old games, because as you know, there was no such thing back then.
Hmm.
So getting to put my own little Easter eggs and kind of touch on it in however way I can is really fun. And with Dark Forces being, again, one of the first games that I played on my own home computer, it was really a special moment for me.
Yeah, when it came out, I was, of course, one of the first to wishlist it and then buy it. And I was surprised that you guys got the rights from Disney. Usually they hold that stuff really close. How does it work? How did it work with Disney? How does it work in general? Explain how you go about acquiring these rights.
Sure. So, you know, back in the day, it was really hard to convince some of these rights holders to let us, who at the time was kind of like a no-name studio, take one of their IPs, regardless of, how beloved it was, I guess, or and kind of just trust in us that we were going to do something good with it. There was also, I think, just a feeling that nothing we did or anything anyone could do with some of these old IPs would ultimately be worth it. They were just kind of happy to just let it sit there and languish until we could make a solid business case or put enough money up front to kind of whet the appetite. So at first, it was really just kind of going out to everybody and just basically begging to let us do something with their games. But I'd say like after maybe Turok 2, it got a lot easier. We were working with id Software, and they had us do a remaster of Doom 64, and then that really opened the doors after we kind of had that first like tier 1 IP kind of under our belt. But with Disney, it was just a matter of, making a relationship with their business developer, understanding what their goals were with some of the old IP. And, I had started talking to them years and years and years ago when they had acquired LucasArts and the whole Star Wars IP. Because my first instinct was, oh man, there's so many LucasArts games that are just not available digitally. Like we could basically do them all because they were mostly in DOS. Again, we weren't really well known at that point in time. So they're like, yeah, nice to meet you, but we're going to go in a different direction with this. And I basically just stayed in touch over the years and just waited until I guess we were at the right place in our business and they were kind of in the right place with theirs and understanding what their goals were with some of these games. And we were able to get that first agreement in, and it was for Dark Forces and Outlaws. And we were able to do that because they both use the same engine. So we kind of made the case, hey, if we do one, basically, 3/4 of the work is done for the other as well, and we can kind of just do them both simultaneously. Now, at the time, we didn't know that there was another game coming out called Star Wars Outlaws. So that's why there's kind of a big gap in these two games coming out, is we had to wait for that AAA project to come out first. But yeah, that's basically it. Having an IP in mind and going and finding the right people. If it's a game that we don't know what happened to it, my first stop is basically mobygames.com. I'll go through the credits, which are all, catalog there, and I'll just see if I can track down some of the original team members and ask them questions about, if they know where the code is, if they know who ended up with the rights, if they want to be involved with the project, that kind of thing. So it's a lot of just kind of looking people up and hoping you find them.
Are there any remasters that were particularly troublesome acquiring the rights for?
Yeah. Blade Runner was one that was very difficult. Even just finding out who owned the Blade Runner rights a number of years ago was very hard. When the movie came out, there was a group of producers that referred to themselves as the Blade Runner Partnership. And one of the main characters there was this guy named Bud Yorkin, who has a very storied history in Hollywood. He had been involved for many years. He's since passed away. But I was trying to find him. I figured I might as well go right to the top. And who I ended up tracking down was his wife, Cynthia, who was like a Miss America pageant winner in the 80s. And she had been on JAG and, some of those shows. And how I got in contact with her is another whole story. I had a Google search alert set up for Bud Yorkin, and there just wasn't anything for years and years and years. And then suddenly one day I get the alert, and his house was for sale. So I contacted the real estate agent. And I told him what I was trying to do, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll introduce you to his wife, Cynthia." So the real estate agent got me in touch with her, and this was right around the time that Blade Runner 2049 was just like getting into production. Hadn't been announced. Um, it was just kind of serendipitous. So the rights were kind of bubbling to the top, so to speak. And so there was room there, and we had the conversations with her, and she was really optimistic about doing the project. And then I might have to be fact checked on this. I'm not exactly recalling what had happened, but I think then Warner or Alcon Entertainment then purchased all the rights from Warner Brothers. And so the rights switched hands while we were negotiating. And it's like all the discussions and everything had to basically restart at that point, but with another entertainment company. Um, all the while, I'm trying to get the game rights from Electronic Arts, who had acquired Westwood, who did the original game, and that's another whole saga, because no one was exactly sure where those rights ended up. It was before the time where they had digital records of things, and so it was probably on a piece of paper in a file box somewhere in the basement, you know. So yeah, it probably took about 7 years from start to finish to get the
Wow.
rights to do that.
But it was
Um,
like a treasure hunt, and you found it.
it really was, and it was fun because it gave me a lot of experience. At first, when I started the business, I would prepare basically notes on whoever it was I was talking to, and have almost like a choose your own adventure scenario written out. So like if this specific question got asked, I could, quickly refer to some of these other topics. It was like a dialogue tree in an adventure game that I would like basically write for myself because I just didn't have the experience having these business conversations with people who had been in these industries for years and years. So it was kind of like my cheat sheet in making them believe I knew what I was talking about.
Hmm.
So I look back on those years, and it's it's fun to see how far everything has come, and my familiarity with this stuff. I never thought that I would be on the business side of games um, after going to school, but uh, here I am. It's been 14 years almost, I think, doing
Mm.
this.
Yep. Yeah, and like any business, it gets easier over time. The gears start moving, the processes develop, and more importantly, the relationships develop. So once you get all of those locked in, I assume it's getting a little bit easier.
A
But
little bit, yeah.
yeah, I'm curious if there's any elusive titles out there that you would love to do a remake for that have been out of reach for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. The one that gets brought up all the time is No One Lives Forever. Um, it's one of my favorite games, both the first and the second game, and there's another really long story about trying to track that down, and um, it just seemed like the more I kept digging, the more tangled the web would get with that one.
Hmm.
um, but again, we've made some really good contacts at various companies that may or may not have pieces of that, and hopefully one day we can kind of put it all together. uh, but besides that, one game I would really love to see out there again is Eternal Darkness, the GameCube exclusive horror game by Silicon Knights.
Hmm.
Um, I remember, again, I was in college and I had just moved in with my girlfriend, and she had a GameCube, and I was looking up um, like the best Lovecraftian horror games at the time, and really there weren't that many. There was some point and click adventure games back in the 90s, like Shadow of the Comet and Prisoner of Ice. There was Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth, and maybe a handful of others that were, lightly inspired by Lovecraft, and then Eternal Darkness, but it had been again a GameCube exclusive, and even at that time, I think it was commanding pretty high prices because it just wasn't, it just didn't have that good of distribution. And my girlfriend got that for me for Christmas one year, and I remember just like playing that and just being absolutely blown away by it. And it's been on my list for many years. And yeah, that's got to be up there amongst
All right.
No One Lives Forever, and um gosh, I'm trying to think. What would be another? How about you? What would you pick?
Jedi Knight was one of my favorites back in the day. Uh, you could do Ken's Labyrinth. How about that? That would be a fun one. You could go all out with it though. And hey, I just interviewed Ken Silverman, the creator, and I'm sure he'd be very happy to see it. Although Epic Mega Games, they're the ones that initially released it in 1993, so they might hold the rights. But I don't know. That's something to look into.
You say
But
Epic Mega Games?
they did, yes. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah. He was one of the first.
we tried to do Unreal, and but before that, I tried to get the rights to Jazz Jackrabbit.
Hmm.
Um, and I ended up talking to Cliff Bleszinski about that, and he went to Epic on my behalf and was like, "Come on, guys! Like, these guys did Quake and Doom and stuff. Like, let them do Jazz." And they just are not interested right now.
Hmm. Sweeney's pretty approachable. It's interesting you mentioned how you sent an email to the head of Valve the other day. I saw Tim Sweeney post on X something, him lamenting about how Fortnite was down in Algeria. Apparently, it had been blocked for almost a month. And odd turn of events. Several years ago, I volunteered with a telecommunications conference through the United Nations in Africa, and I met the minister of telecom for Algeria, and I got him and his team all of their contact information.
Oh my
And
god.
then I sent Sweeney an email with the contacts of Algeria, and I also sent the Ken Silverman interview, and he replied right away and was like, "Thank you so much for the Algeria contacts." Funniest thing, the next day, that minister of telecom in Algeria put a post and a video saying Fortnite's been restored. So
Oh my
it
gosh.
was like, it's just so funny how the world works on people. So I'll take credit for helping to save Fortnite in Algeria for millions of children there. But it's funny, an email to Tim Sweeney.
Yeah.
So
You got him on a good day, because I had retweeted something that Cliff had tweeted about wanting to bring back Unreal, and I tagged Tim, and then he wrote to me and said, "I don't want you getting our fans up in a in a hype, trying to get them to get you a license to do this."
hmm.
And then he blocked me.
Oh no. So you're blocked. Oh,
Yeah, I'm like,
uh.
all I did, I just retweeted what Cliff said. I'm not trying to do anything, like,
Well, then maybe don't reach out to Tim. I don't know.
yeah, I gotta just wait patiently or something. I don't know. But yeah,
Uh,
Unreal and Unreal Tournament are kind of like the last of the FPS games that like we haven't done. We've done everything else. So yeah, Tim, if you're watching this, uh, give me another chance.
So a few years ago, NightDive was acquired by Atari. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
Walk me through, how did that relationship begin up through closing the deal?
Sure. So we had been approached a number of years ago by this gentleman named Wade Rosen, and he was interested in becoming a private investor of Night Dive. And we met with him and understood that he was really passionate about games. He had a level of knowledge of classic games that honestly surprised me. Um, we hadn't taken on any investment up to that point. And I guess what had happened was he was interested in some of his old favorite games, and every time he looked up the status of that game online, our name would appear, like we had already done it or we were working on it or something. And so he reached out to us. He invested in our company, and then a couple years later, he would acquire Atari, and then want to make the focus of that business on retro and their history, their history of titles dating back 50 years. And he saw NightDive as being kind of an integral part in that, as well as Digital Eclipse, which is we lovingly refer to as our sister company at this point. But yeah, basically he reached out again, was like, hey, do you guys want to join Atari, and we can kind of take this whole thing to the next level and get bigger and better games and start remastering more current titles. And by more current, I mean like maybe games from like the 2000s. But it's been a great partnership. They've taken a lot of the like the business side of running a company like this kind of off our plate, like HR, payroll, all the stuff that we just I don't enjoy doing, and have really freed up our resources to focus on just the games. So in that way, and in many others, they've been an amazing partner. And our whole culture and the way that we approach things have generally gone unchanged. So they've been nothing but a positive influence on us and enabled us to do more of what we do best.
So, in a climate where the gaming industry has seen so many layoffs recently, and it's become difficult to make a profit, your company is thriving. What would you attribute that success to?
I think it's the quality of our releases, probably more so than ever, because what we found is that regardless of the game, we've built a community of people that just love being able to experience an older title that had up to that point not been available. And not only that, but they can kind of dive into the history with the advent of us creating what we call the vault in our games, which is basically archive of concept art, game design documents, behind the scenes features, things that have never been seen before, that were part of this game's history. And so uh, when people, and I hear this a lot, it's when a game of ours comes out, oftentimes there's just a group of people that just buy it because they want to experience it, whether they know the game or not.
Hmm.
And that's just been a really wonderful thing to discover, that people genuinely enjoy going back and experiencing these things, either for the first time, um, or getting back to relive, maybe a moment in their past where um, they've got a particular nostalgia for the era or the type of game or where they were in their lives when they first played it. We hear that a lot too. It's, I distinctly remember when we put Shadow Man out, we got more fan mail for that game than probably any other. And they were all, the tone of them was all, I remember playing this with like my dad, or like my brothers and I, we played this game together, and we,
Hmm.
banged our heads on the walls, and it was frustrating, but it brought us together. And now we're all playing the game again because of the re-release, and it's brought us together. Or um, it's crazy how much power these games have on people, and specifically the emotions and the memories that are tied to them as well. And I think that's probably a major reason why we continue to do as well as we are. It's we're enabling people to relive these moments, and it's not something that anybody gets to do or has the responsibility of. and we take it seriously.
What are some titles on the horizon for NightDive?
We are doing I guess you could call it a remaster of Blood, build engine game, which is really great. We just recently got the original source code for Blood, which is amazing. We've been able to kind of go back to our previous version and fix a bunch of things that, were best guesses when we were doing a reverse engineering or something like that. And then this has a vault on it as well. And not only that, but the game will be on console for the first time. So
Awesome.
PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, which I would say we probably got at least one email or one message a week ever since we did the first version of like, hey, when's this come into, console? So that'd be nice not to get those anymore.
Yeah, Blood is one of my favorite games. It's actually in my top 10 favorite DOS games video that you've actually got 3 games that you've remastered that are on that list. And I've been trying to get Nick Newhard locked in. We exchanged emails the other day, and so he hasn't said no to do an interview. That's the lead programmer for the original Blood. And so we'll see if we could get him on. That would be really cool to pick his brain. And it really is a great game.
Yeah, we just actually did an interview with Jace Hall on our podcast, and it's just incredible hearing the stories of what it was like, developing a game back then. Because you always heard, whispers and stories of what game development was like, but hearing it directly from the developers is a real treat. And that's another thing that we value is retelling those stories or keeping those stories alive in whatever way we can. But yeah, so we're doing Blood, and then we're also doing Outlaws, the Western FPS powered by the Jedi engine from LucasArts and Disney. And we are still plugging away at Sin Reloaded. So I just got some renders of the new character models that are going in, and it looks amazing. It was kind of one of those things where we're taking so long with it that we decided to really put in the extra effort to really improve every aspect of it that we can. And it just might be a case of another one of those games that maybe not that many people played, but because it's an FPS and because it's a Night Dive title, I hope it finds a whole new audience.
I know a lot of people are looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, as we know, Half-Life came out right around the same time, and poor Sin may have been overshadowed a little bit.
I heard you are also a connoisseur of retro hardware. And what kind of retro machines have you got?
Well, I have an old desktop. I've got a Windows PC. I think it's a 1.2 gigahertz Pentium 4, Pentium 3. It's basically the best hardware you could get that still ran Windows XP. I'll be honest, it's been a little while since I've booted it up. But I got that to play Nocturne, which is that's another game that I would love to see come back. It was a little frustrating though because as you're well aware, there's still bugs in these old games. And when you run into one and you realize that it was like never patched or never fixed, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I remember how frustrating old PC games could really be sometimes,
Kids these days don't know the ways of us Jedis configuring IRQs and DMAs. The reward was the game. That was really how it felt.
Yep.
Where you had to work for it.
I had to go find an old link on the Adrenaline Vault for a patch, like version 1.12 or something like that of Nocturne, and then transfer it over to that old PC and then install it and then hope that it like fixed the bug that I was experiencing, and it didn't. And so I had to like restart the whole game and be really careful about not trying to trigger that same bug again. It's just awesome. It's so much fun.
So, last question: who would you like to see me interview if you could wave a magic wand and pick anyone in the world?
How about John Romero?
Yeah, he'd be a good one. He's responded to a few things I've sent him of particularly clips of us playing his games like Commander Keen on original hardware. He's been very responsive, and those guys are really in it for the love of the game. So I'll try to get him on.
Awesome. Cool. Would love to see it.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you too. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. It was fun.